Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Loving Someone with PTSD, a practical guide to understanding and connecting with your partner after trauma, by Aphrodite Matsakis, Ph.D., narrated by Rosemary Benson. Publisher's note: this audiobook includes bonus material. Please visit Tantor.com and type Loving Someone with PTSD into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page. Then, under the Supplemental Contents section, please enter the access code LOVING, and then click the Unlock button to access the bonus material. The code should be entered in all lowercase letters. The Helpful Resources section referenced in this audiobook can be found in the bonus material. This publication is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering psychological, financial, legal, or other professional services. If expert assistance or counseling is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Introduction. Love matters. The ability to give and receive love is one of life's chief joys and sources of satisfaction. Without love, even major successes can eventually come to feel empty and dry. Caring relationships help us cope with our fears and the hassles of everyday life, and give us the support we need during times of trouble. People who have a strong relationship with a mate have been found to weather the storms of life better than those who feel unloved. They've also been found to have stronger immune systems and live longer. Your love is important. The support provided by others, especially a mate, helps soothe the feelings of loss, despair, and helplessness experienced by people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, due to combat, police work, natural catastrophes, physical or sexual assault, or another trauma. According to trauma experts, the single most important factor contributing to a person's recovery from trauma is the ability to receive comfort and love from another human being. If your partner suffers from PTSD, your love can play a major role in his healing. You can't be his therapist, but your ability to respond constructively to his symptoms and the challenges they bring to your relationship can make an important difference, not only in terms of his recovery, but in terms of your happiness and well-being, too. The purpose of this book is to help you find ways of being supportive of your partner and coping with your PTSD-related relationship problems that take into account not only your partner's PTSD, but your needs as well. The recovery environment. By learning about PTSD and developing certain coping skills, you'll be doing your part to improve your relationship and limit the damage caused by your loved one's trauma. But your partner must also make an effort, and there needs to be a recovery environment that supports his efforts. Your sensitivity to his PTSD is critical, but his healing will also depend on many other factors. For example, how much support he receives from other family members, friends, and the general community, the availability of quality health care and other services, and the number and severity of the traumas he experienced. In general, exposure to one traumatic experience requires less recovery time than exposure to a series of traumas. Recovery time is also influenced by the financial, emotional, and medical consequences of the trauma, and by the number and nature of any especially positive or negative events that occurred after the trauma. For example, the returning soldier who can't find a job, who loses several family members in a car accident, or whose home is destroyed by a flood, will probably have more adjustment problems than one whose return isn't strained by major losses. Social prejudices based on age, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or religion can also make recovery harder and longer. The same holds true for survivors who struggle with both an addiction and PTSD, who had medical or psychiatric problems before their trauma, or who have one or more family members experiencing a major stress or life change. All PTSD cases are not the same. Symptoms vary in degree and form from one person to the next, depending on the individual's personality, religious or spiritual beliefs, culture, and thoughts about the meaning of the trauma. For example, Don, who lost his home in a fire, viewed the fire as a punishment for not having paid his ex-wife child support. Hence, Don needed more therapy than his roommates, who didn't blame themselves for the fire. You are not alone. Not everyone who is traumatized develops PTSD. Some develop other psychiatric disorders, such as clinical depression, and others suffer only temporary or relatively minor symptoms that never develop into PTSD or any other official psychiatric disorder, though sometimes symptoms emerge years later, following another trauma or major loss. For the purposes of this book, however, the term survivor will refer to those survivors with PTSD. As of the writing of this book, the lifetime prevalence of PTSD among adult Americans is estimated to be approximately 6.8%, or some 17 million people. This figure, however, doesn't include the many people whose PTSD is masked by an addiction, or who don't seek help, and hence can't be counted. It also doesn't include the many people who have enough PTSD symptoms to cause problems, but not enough to be diagnosed with full-blown PTSD. PTSD and relationships. Although PTSD sufferers are troubled by their symptoms, they're usually far more distressed by the ways their symptoms and traumatic memories interfere with their ability to function in the present. PTSD damages the ability to pursue a career in some survivors more than others. However, almost all survivors have relationship problems. Trauma can damage one's ability to trust, not only other people, but also oneself. Yet without some basic sense of trust and faith in oneself and in others, relationships, especially intimate ones, are hard to establish and maintain. The more betrayals a survivor experienced, the more difficulty he may have trusting and being close to others. On the other hand, there are also survivors, especially among those who were abused as young children, who maintain a childlike faith in the goodness of all humankind. Therefore, they can easily be manipulated by others. There are also survivors who alternate between being extremely cynical and extremely naive. Still others have been so beaten down by life that they are quick to trust almost anyone who offers help or support, without checking out the sincerity or credentials of that person or organization. Some survivors can be wary of most people, yet blinded by compassion toward fellow survivors or others who suffer, or who pretend to suffer, or exaggerate their sufferings in order to take advantage of the survivor. Some survivors over-identify with other survivors, not realizing that even if someone was traumatized or suffers in a similar way, it doesn't necessarily mean that person is honest. Being either overly suspicious or overly trusting can create problems with a partner who is able to judge the sincerity of others more realistically. As is well known by now, when one person in a family suffers, other family members suffer too. If you love someone with PTSD, you can't help but be affected by his mood swings or his seemingly unpredictable reactions to others, especially to you, his partner and mate. At times it may seem as if you're the most important person in his life. Indeed, You may be the one to whom he turns when his anxiety and sadness feel unbearable, or when he feels frightened and confused by his flashbacks and nightmares. Perhaps he's even stated that you're his main reason for living, or that without you by his side, he'd have given up long ago. Yet at other times, you may be the target of his frustrations with himself, his despair about the future, or his anger at those who he feels acted unjustly during his trauma. Other times he may withdraw from you altogether and seem surrounded by a wall that shuts you out. During those times, whether you ignore him, try your best to please him, or even try to pick a fight with him, you can't pierce his wall. You may then feel alone, abandoned, and quite unappreciated. You may also feel resentful, yet wonder if you have the right to feel resentful. My partner wouldn't be having all these problems if he weren't traumatized, you may reason. Yet sometimes you may also wonder if he's using PTSD as an excuse. Respecting your own pain. Your partner has sadness and pain born from his horrible experiences. But you have a different kind of sadness and pain. Yours is the sorrow of loving and wanting more closeness with someone you don't always understand, or know how to react to, or whether to react to at all. Sometimes he's so loving toward you and seems so dependent on your love. But other times he won't let you love him at all. Meanwhile, some of your deepest needs go unmet. Your suffering is real, just as real as your partner's. There is no hierarchy of grief, where only those with certain kinds of pain are entitled to feel sad. Do you feel you're shouldering more financial and other responsibilities than you'd like to, or ever expected to, because of his PTSD? Having to do more than you're willing or able to do can create additional stress for you and your relationship. There is hope. Unfortunately, the media often portray PTSD sufferers either as walking time bombs capable of going postal and exploding at any moment, or as homeless, pitiful creatures walking around in a daze. These damaging stereotypes of survivors as crazy lunatics or hopeless cases are false. PTSD is a condition that a person has. It is not the entire person. It's also a highly manageable condition. Like diabetes, with proper care and the right kind of support, PTSD symptoms can be controlled. Some of your partner's memories and difficulties may remain forever, but the negative effects of his trauma can be considerably reduced. Today there are any number of effective therapies and other treatments for PTSD. They can't make his PTSD disappear, but they've enabled thousands of survivors to contribute to society and enjoy the benefits of an intimate relationship again. Both the media and the mental health field tend to emphasize the negative effects of trauma. These negative effects are real, but recent research indicates that trauma can also develop various personal strengths and deepen relationships. Hence, the turmoil you and your partner are experiencing may be laying the foundation for a stronger, more meaningful relationship. Just as you can't help but be affected by his problems, down the line you may benefit and be inspired by any emotional, spiritual, or other growth he might experience. How this book can help you. Book overview. Whether your partner suffers from occasional bouts of PTSD symptoms, or her PTSD is severe enough to have put her on disability, this book can provide you with some basic tools for helping not only her, but yourself. Despite the enormity of her pain and other problems, your life deserves attention and care, too. In Chapter 1, What is PTSD? You'll learn about PTSD and its possible effects on your moods, your partner's moods, and your ability to communicate with each other. In Chapter 2, PTSD and Your Relationship, you'll take a close look at your original hopes for your relationship and how PTSD helped or didn't help your wishes come true. You'll then begin looking at specific ways PTSD has affected both you as an individual and your relationship, and identifying some ways you'd like the relationship to improve. Communication is a problem for many couples, especially couples in which one partner has PTSD. In Chapter 3, Basic Communication Skills, you'll identify some of the positive and negative ways you and your partner communicate, and then learn some positive communication skills to use with someone with PTSD. In Chapter 4, Talking about Difficult Subjects and Making Decisions Together, you'll learn how you can affect a person's ability to make decisions and to discuss emotionally sensitive subjects, such as relationship issues. You'll then be shown ways to make your joint decision-making go more smoothly, and to discuss relationship problems and other potentially explosive subjects in the most productive way possible. You'll also learn when and how to put certain topics on hold. Like the rest of this book, Chapters 3 and 4 don't promise a tension-free relationship. But by learning the skills and principles in these chapters, you'll increase your chances of being heard by your partner and of making progress toward your relationship goals. In Chapter 5, Managing Triggers and Trigger Reactions, you'll learn more about triggers, reminders of one's trauma, and ways of helping your partner manage them. This chapter also provides suggestions for improving the safety of your living environment and for coping with long-standing triggers, medical appointments, social situations, and other types of triggers. Equally important, you'll be shown how to take better care of yourself when she's triggered. Chapter 6, Crises, Panic Attacks, Rage Reactions, Domestic Violence, Addiction, and Suicide, describes some of the causes of these crises and provides suggestions for coping with them until outside help becomes available. Chapter 7, PTSD Therapy and You, describes the different kinds of PTSD therapy currently available and how therapy can affect your relationship. It also provides suggestions for talking to your partner about trauma, for encouraging her to seek help, and for finding ways to better meet your own needs despite the pressing needs of your family. Helpful resources lists organizations, hotlines, books, and other sources of information and support for you and your partner. This book provides some limited suggestions for coping with anxiety, numbing, and other problems. It isn't, however, a healing guide for depression, PTSD, or any other major psychiatric disorder. If you or someone in your family has a severe or ongoing form of emotional or mental distress, you'll also need to work with more specialized self-help books or with a licensed mental health professional. Legal help and other kinds of professional help are definitely necessary if you or someone in your household is being physically or sexually abused. See the resources section in the bonus materials. If you're a trauma survivor, too, parts of this book might bring to the surface painful aspects of your past. Hence, you'll need to be especially careful to work with this book at your own pace and observe the cautions listed next. Cautions. Treat yourself gently as you work with this book. Don't rush through it. When it comes to issues of the heart, there are no fast fixes. All change, even positive change, is a process and takes time. Be as patient with yourself as you've been or tried to be with your partner. Monitor yourself carefully so that you don't become emotionally overwhelmed or feel out of control in any way. It's normal to experience some upset in looking at certain aspects of your life. But if your distress doesn't decrease in a short time, or you begin having problems functioning, stop listening to this book immediately. Then call your physician or a qualified mental health professional, or go to the emergency room of a local hospital. Also, stop listening to this book and seek help if you experience any of the following: ongoing anxiety, depression or numbing, suicidal or homicidal thoughts, increased desire to engage in substance abuse, self-mutilation, overspending, or some other self-destructive behavior, feeling out of touch with reality, even temporarily, for example, having hallucinations or especially vivid flashbacks, physical symptoms such as bleeding, uncontrollable shaking, hyperventilation, extreme nausea, diarrhea, or any new or unexplained pain, or increased symptoms of a pre-existing medical or psychiatric condition. When the suggestions in a chapter may be of limited use. If there's frequent verbal abuse in your relationship, especially if there's also physical violence, the suggestions in this book will be of limited use. For these suggestions to have any lasting impact, the person or people responsible for the abuse need to be in a treatment program specifically designed to stop the abuse. Similarly, if your partner enjoys being cruel or has been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, the ideas in this book may have little effect. She needs to regularly attend intensive therapy aimed at helping her overcome her need to manipulate and mistreat others. If she's abusive or cruel, however, she may be able to manipulate the therapist. She could also use going to therapy as a way of manipulating you. Hence, her simply going to sessions is not enough. You need to see consistent signs of positive change. The important word here is consistent. Most people can act better for a short time, but the changes need to be long-lasting before you can have some confidence that your partner is actually benefiting from counseling. Writing and reflecting. Keeping a journal. Learning about PTSD and looking over some of the suggested coping skills in this book are good first steps toward improving your situation. But you'll get the most out of this book if, after listening to each chapter, you spend 10 or 15 minutes writing about what you learned and how the material in the chapter affected and applies to you. Writing can help you release some of your feelings. It can also give you insight into the emotional truths of your life. Some of these truths may be difficult to face, but only by facing them can you begin taking the necessary steps to lessen your stress and unhappiness. Writing can also help you uncover some of your inner strengths and positive aspects of your relationships that you hadn't fully appreciated before. Questionnaires. Even if you already keep a personal diary, you'll need a separate notebook to record your thoughts and feelings as you listen to this book, and to complete the questionnaires. These writing exercises are designed to help you find personal solutions to your PTSD-related relationship problems. Write for yourself, not a professor. Don't worry about spelling or sentence structure. Let your thoughts flow freely in any language, or as many languages as you wish. Feel free to change any specifics in the exercises to fit your experience. If a question refers to the survivor as female and your partner is male, substitute he for she, or vice versa. PTSD occurs among both men and women of all sexual orientations. To reflect this reality, Some parts of each chapter are addressed to those with female partners, and other parts to those with male partners. You can skip around as you listen to this book and focus on those topics and exercises most relevant to you. Also, feel free to skip over any sections that make you uncomfortable. It's essential that you listen to chapters 1 and 2, however, because they lay the foundation for the rest of the chapters. Alternatives to writing. If you don't want to use writing as a way of learning the material in this book and applying it to your specific circumstances, consider using meditation or some other kind of quiet reflection. Or maybe you think better when doing something active by yourself, such as swimming, gardening, or mindless chores. Whatever method you choose, set aside time to focus on the topics and exercises at hand, someplace where you aren't distracted. The importance of thinking before acting. In ancient Greek mythology, the goddess of wisdom, Athena, also the goddess of war, cautioned warriors to think before acting. She'd stop warriors from reacting impulsively or out of habit. Instead, she advised them to study and assess not only the problem before them, but also their own emotional and physical condition before deciding what to do. But you don't have to be a warrior to benefit from this ancient wisdom. Since you've been with your partner, you've probably developed some ways of reacting to her that are almost automatic. Some of these habits may be helpful, but it's those that aren't that you'll be trying to change. Writing or reflecting on the material in this book and completing the exercises are ways of following through on the age-old advice to learn, observe, and assess before acting. Indeed, one of the goals of PTSD therapy is to teach survivors to think before they act. Even a moment of thought can help them from reacting in ways that might have been reasonable during the trauma, but not so beneficial in the present. A final note. This book is based on existing research on trauma and on more than 30 years of counseling survivors and their families. Although this book is written primarily for partners of survivors with PTSD, the well-being and needs of survivors are also considered. In listening to the life stories of survivors and their partners and other family members, I've learned that there are no good guys or bad guys. I've also learned that both the survivor and her partner often feel painfully different from other couples because they must cope with the effects of the past as well as the stresses of the present. Yet the world is full of survivors and their families. Often, being in a partner's support group helps to lessen the feelings of isolation experienced by many partners. Hopefully, this book can serve a similar purpose. And hopefully, it will also remind you that you and your partner are not inferior, either individually or as a couple, simply because you've been wounded by tragic events that make it difficult for the two of you to connect at times. As you listen to this book, you may find that particular sections or suggestions don't apply to your situation. That's because each individual and couple is unique. Also, the problems you and your partner face are influenced by many factors other than your individual personalities. For example, societal attitudes, finances, or physical injury. Due to space limitations, the topic of physical disability is not covered in this book. Yet even under ideal circumstances, such as excellent medical care and financial coverage, disability can be a nightmare for all involved. This book is only a beginning guide toward improving your relationship and helping you take a closer look at your personal priorities. It is not intended to be, nor can it be, a substitute for medical and psychiatric diagnoses and treatment. You may need the assistance of qualified health professionals and perhaps spiritual advisors to help support your efforts. Chapter 1. What is PTSD? This chapter explains how trauma can lead to PTSD, the symptoms of PTSD.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?